Well, that supermarket inquiry also highlights the increasing difficulty that business and especially food and beverage service businesses are under right now. This was borne out today by CreditorWatch's latest survey, which says that around 1 in 14 businesses in the food industry are at risk of failure. Western Sydney, South East Queensland and Merrylands-Guilford in the Sydney area are also said to be the riskiest areas to be doing business right now. So let's bring in here CreditorWatch's Chief Executive, Patrick Coghlan. Patrick, many thanks for your time. I mean, that food services business, it's tough at the best of times, but the margins are skinny right now.
Yeah, you're spot on there, Ross. It's always a really tough industry to operate in, even in boom times. Margins are tight and it's just getting tighter and harder for them, unfortunately.
OK, so your headline today on this says invoice defaults at record highs as cost pressures squeeze businesses. So when you go to invoice defaults, you track that sort of stuff. What exactly are you seeing?
So effectively what that means is, invoices are being issued for goods or services. Take restaurants, for example, they get sent meat and alcohol. Invoices are just not being paid. So when they're not paid, a default gets registered against the credit file of that particular business that's not paying their invoices. And we're seeing a huge increase in that. And it's not just in hospitality, it's across most industries, unfortunately.
OK, so I've mentioned the food services industry there. Are there any others that really stand out to you in terms of the risk of business failure?
Yeah, look, there's a lot of pressure, obviously, on construction. We're seeing the likes of services around the construction and building industry, like safety, for example, admin and support services. You can imagine in a world where businesses are trying to cut costs anywhere they can get rid of those sort of third-party costs they're doing as well. So plenty of pressure on those.
And is there any sort of trend in those regions of Australia where there is the greatest danger of default right now?
Look, typically what we find is regional Australia does very well. They're usually a slightly older demographic. They've got smaller or no mortgages. There's less competition. They're very supportive of their local community as well. But the likes of, the Sydney CBD, Melbourne CBD, Brisbane CBD, under a lot of pressure, rising costs. Obviously, the cost of rent and commercial property continues to go up. So they're certainly doing it tougher than what we would see in the regions.
See, it's almost a perfect storm. You've got rising insurance premiums, you've got cautious consumers, you've got rising rents because of property values in many of these major metropolitan areas. And so if business goes a little bit sideways, then from that point of view, many of these businesses do live hand to mouth. They've got nowhere to run.
That's right. And there's no buffer. We know that small businesses typically will have maybe 3 months of cash on hand to cover, wages, for example, as a minimum. That's being eaten up, if not has already been eaten up. It's tough to get funding out there. And that's obviously not going against the banks. They've obviously got their own, regulation that they've got to work within. So it's tough for a small business. They don't have, many options to turn to.
And there's one other aspect of this that I think about, and that is if all of a sudden these smaller, medium-sized businesses start going backwards or starting to have to cut back, then that could lead to rising unemployment, which is forecast by most. But that has a real-world effect of actually cutting consumption even further.
Yeah, that's right. Look, at the end of the day, we know that we needed to get inflation under control. And as a result of, the interest rate increases, we're seeing this knock-on effect, which is putting a huge amount of pressure on both consumers and businesses. But we do expect the unemployment rate to continue to increase. As a result of that, there'll be less consumption, like you say. Until we really have a clear understanding of when that first rate cut is coming, we don't expect us to peak until probably mid or just after financial year end.
I'll tell you what, Patrick, it's pretty sobering stuff, but I appreciate your time on the program today.
Thanks for the time, Ross.